Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to use panels to make skirts just like these. Now these are what I use to make paneled skirts. Each of these pattern pieces can be used to make a medium-sized skirt. That first piece will make a skirt with 8 panels. The second one will make a skirt with 12 panels. The third one will make a skirt that has 16 panels. The fourth will make a skirt with 20 panels. And the fifth will make a skirt with 24 panels. Now, I could take something like this. This is a jean pant leg. And I could make a skirt for a little girl from 1 or 2 legs. But that's not enough material for me. However, if I use my panels in several pairs of pants, I can take something like this and make skirts like these. Don't worry about that now. One thing at a time. First, let's make those panels. Really quick, here's how you use a panel pattern and why your pattern doesn't need to be full length. You're going to use your yardstick and your panel to draw a line on either side, and when you're done, you'll cut on the line and have something like this. For my example, I'm making a 12-paneled skirt. I take 3 panels and join them together to make half of the front of my skirt. 3 more pieces joined and I have a complete front or back. And here's the finished product. This will work with any number of panels. Okay, for the rest of this video, you're going to need to download the file that's in the description box below. The worksheet has several different equations. Let's do one together. If you haven't already downloaded the worksheet and printed it out, I'd suggest that you might want to do that, only because this could be really confusing as if you're just looking at the video. But if you have the worksheet in hand and you actually have plugged your measurements in and are doing it with me, I think it should be a whole lot less complicated. Alright, well, what you're going to do first is you're going to plug in your waist to hip, and desired length measurements into your worksheet. You might as well just plug them into all the different panel skirts. I'm going to be demonstrating all of them on the channel, so you could save time and do it one time, or you can just do the one that you want to do, or do the 4-panel skirt with me, since that's what I'm doing right now. Alright, once you have plugged in your measurements, you need to decide how much ease you want around your waist and your hips. For example, the ease is how loose it'll fit, whether it'll be super snug or if it'll be kind of loose on your hips and waist. I kind of went middle of the road for my measurements, but we'll go through that in a minute. After you've plugged in your ease, you're going to get your total and write it in the blank across from the divide by 8 number if you're looking at the 4-panel skirt worksheet or item. And then after that, you're going to measure from your waist to hips. The easiest way to do that is to sit on a chair and measure from your waistline to where your backside hits the chair, and that's your waist to hip measurement. Then you're going to add in your seam allowance at your waist. This depends on whether or not you're going to be folding over your waistband and making a casing that way, or if you're going to be using a facing or an attached waistband. If none of that makes sense, don't worry about it. We'll explain those another day. But for the moment, just put in your normal seam allowance for that. And then transfer all that over to your seam measurement line. And then last thing, you're going to get your desired length. That is the desired length that you want your skirt to be from the waist down to where you want it to stop. Plug that in, and then you're going to need to decide on your seam allowance at the waist again. And you're going to put that into D. Alright, let me do this for you with my measurements. My waist is about 29.5 inches. It's actually a little bit less, but we'll use that for the moment. 29.5 inches. I'm going to be using 2-inch seam allowance. I'm using 1.5 inches for ease, and my total after I add that all together, 29 plus 2 is 31.5 plus 1.5 equals 33. Then I'm going to divide that by 8 and I'm going to get 4.125 inches. We're going to see what I'm going to do with that in a minute. Just keep it with me. Next, my hips. My hips are about 36. I'm going to add 2 inches seam allowance. That's going to be 38. I'm going to add 3 inches for ease. That's going to take me to 41. Divide that by 8. I get 5.125 inches. Next, my waist to hips. From my waist to my hips, it's about 8 inches. I'm going to add 1/4 of an inch for seam allowance at my waist, and that will give me 8.25 inches. Finally, I want my skirt to be about 38 inches long. I'm going to add 1 inch for my hem and 1/4 of an inch for my seam allowance, and I made a mistake. That should be 39.25 inches. All right, so that is how you do that sheet, and fill in your measurements and then go with me to the next slide. Okay, this chart is going to be useful for you in converting those decimals to fractions. You're going to need to have the fractions since we're going to be working with inches and feet instead of the metric system. So you may want to take a minute and pause the video, find the decimals that you got when you did your division, and write that on the side. We're going to need that in the next slide. Okay, so you see that I've taken my decimals and used the last slide to change them into fractions, and you'll see why this is useful in a minute. Now that math is done, let's go ahead and make that pattern. You're going to grab a sheet of paper and fold it in half. As you can see, I kind of got ahead of myself. You may need to use a larger piece of paper. My measurements just barely fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that I was using. Go ahead and grab your ruler. Mark your total that was on line A on the top edge of the paper. Mine was 4 1/8 inches. Here's just a wider view. Now you're going to mark the total that was on line C. That's the distance from your waist to your hips. Mine was about 8 inches. Now you're going to mark your total that was on line B, directly across from the mark that you just made, which was your total for line C. Pretty much you're about to mark where your hip line was. My B total was 5 1/8 inches. Now you're going to connect the dots. Draw a line from your first dot to the last dot that you just made. This is how it will look. Now grab your paper cutting scissors. Cut off that little bit on top and the side where the line was drawn. And there you have it, your pattern piece for a 4-paneled skirt. You'll probably want to label it. Remember, the narrow edge is the top of where your waist is going to be. Like I said before, I'm going to be doing a good bit of videos using different size panels, so if you want to be able to follow along, you might consider filling out the sheet and making the 4, 6, 8, and 12 panel patterns, but that's only a suggestion. Here's another video where I talk about panels. That's it for now. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch.